No, gentlemen, this woman you're seeing on screen is Marimar Martínez, also known as La Maggie, and she ruined her life over something foolish. It turns out that this woman, along with a group of others, attacked immigration agents, AIS agents. This woman already faces a formal federal charge, and if found guilty, she could spend decades in prison. Some are even talking about a life sentence. All of this just because she wanted to play the hero, the brave one, the social activist. Here's what they're telling us. She is Marimar Martínez, also known as La Maggie. She has a history of revealing personal information about ICE agents. Yesterday, she rammed her pickup truck into an ICE vehicle and was shot because of it. In fact, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, comments, "The FBI has just arrested 2 individuals who allegedly drove these vehicles and attacked our federal law enforcement officers. They have been charged with assaulting federal officers with a deadly weapon, and a dangerous one at that. If you attack our law enforcement agents, the FBI will find you and bring you to justice." Okay, join me as I watch this video that went viral in the United States, where Marimar Martínez, alias La Maggie, allegedly attacked ICE agents. Just look, see what's happening, what's occurring. Okay, look at this. But what the heck? What complete madness. Oh, wow. Look at that. Even the agents come out and everything. No. Unbelievable. Okay, it turns out that the video you just saw does not show Marimar Martínez, alias La Maggie. Yes, just as you heard, it's not what this woman did. However, it was indeed an attack that happened that same day against ICE agents. Please pay attention. That footage is not from the attack in Chicago that involved the caravan of 10 cars blocking our police force. This video does not involve the MAG. This is from another vehicular assault later that same day in Chicago, where an individual rammed an ICE vehicle. What's happening here, no matter how much they try to whitewash it, is something terrible. Of course, this is happening occasionally against ICE agents in the United States. Do you realize that? It's unbelievable. It's completely crazy. But this is happening very, very frequently. Now, it's worth clarifying that, at least at the time I'm recording this video, there is no public video of what Maggie did. There isn't one. There isn't any video that has gone viral on social media showing what Maggie did. However, everything seems to indicate that it was much worse than the video we just saw. It turns out that Maggie was together with 10 other vehicles. In other words, 10 vehicles rammed ICE agents, and that's where Maggie was involved. In fact, Maggie was armed. Just so people know, Maggie was carrying a weapon.
Chicago was on edge after a series of attacks against federal agents. In the suburbs of Norwich and Bensfieldville, 2 men, Miguel Escarreño de Lora and Whitman Asberto Lopez Funes, were arrested after using their vehicles as weapons against ICE officers. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed that both are already facing serious federal charges for attempting to ram agents during immigration operations. But the most alarming case happened in Brinton Park. There, a woman identified as Marimar Martínez led an attack in which at least 10 cars surrounded the federal agents. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Martínez was armed with a semi-automatic weapon and rammed an official vehicle with the intent to run over the agents. The federal agents responded with gunfire. She was injured and taken into custody. Now she faces a devastating legal outlook. The combined sentences could even lead to life in prison. The situation is quite complicated for those who attempt to attack federal officers. Will face the full weight of federal justice in a tense moment for the country. What do you all think? Here it goes.
Look, I think what this woman did is completely unjustifiable, and she definitely deserves the full force of the law. Look, I get that a lot of people might think ICE agents are really bad, they're terrible, how could they want to detain immigrants? I can understand that from the immigrant's perspective, who goes illegally to the United States and is looking to improve their living conditions. However, it's not Donald Trump's or the United States' responsibility to improve your life. It's not. Donald Trump is the president of the United States and of Americans, not of Mexicans or Colombians. And if your country couldn't guarantee you a good standard of living, that's the fault of your country's leaders. Donald Trump, like any leader, should make it a priority to protect Americans and their border. Guys, for example, very few people know this, but Mexico, yes, Mexico, is one of the countries that deports the most people in the world. Mexico is a country that deports countless people every year. In fact, immigration in Mexico often denies entry to a lot of people at the airport. There are many people from Latin America, from Argentina, from Colombia, who want to go to Cancun for a weekend. And it turns out they get deported. There are a lot of people who have been deported at the Mexico airport. And these are people who were just going for tourism, who had their return tickets, had money, had their hotel reservations, and still got deported. Look, in fact, here it says that more than 53,000 Colombians were denied entry to Mexico. This happened in 2024. That's right, 53,000 Colombians were deported at the airport. And you know what? I think that's fine. Mexico has every right in the world to protect its border and deny entry to anyone they believe won't contribute to the country, or who might end up staying illegally in Mexican territory. And not only that, but I'm also going to tell you something very peculiar. Mexicans themselves support the idea that foreigners living in the country who behave badly, are racist, or commit any kind of crime should be deported. Pay attention, you can be deported for being racist according to the law. This is what the law says in Mexico. In fact, look, a petition was signed on change.org to deport Lady Racist, a woman who insulted some police officers in Mexico. Mexicans demanded the deportation of this woman, who was of foreign origin and wasn't contributing anything good to the country. And you know what? I think that's fine, I think it's right. However, this is where I have a question. Why can other countries control their borders? Why can the rest of the countries in the world decide who gets in and who doesn't, but if the US does it, it's terrible and it's racist? Because it seems like the US owes it to the world to open its borders and open its doors. I mean, that's a question I have for everyone. Why should the US government have to let anyone into its territory, into its country? And why, if they deny you entry, if they reject you, are they the bad guys when your own country denies entry to many people? So my question is, why is it okay when your country deports people? You even applaud it? But if the United States does it, it's wrong. That's the question I ask myself. What this woman did is regrettable, and if she is found guilty, she definitely deserves jail time. And all of this has happened because there are people who say it's terrible, that it's really bad for immigration agents to do their job, to fulfill their function. Seriously, it's embarrassing. Everything that's happening in the United States. Honestly, all of this has largely been promoted by the media and the Democratic Party. There's no doubt about that. But listen, I want us to look at the following article because it's brutal. Univision News. Hearing contradicts the version of federal agents who caught Marimar Martínez in Chicago. If you read this, what do you understand? How do you interpret it? Well, basically that they're contradicting what the ICE agents are saying, that they made it all up and that this woman is probably innocent. Not at all. I mean, that's what I find so awful about these media outlets. Seriously, how they try to play with the narrative and twist the facts to suit themselves. What really happened is that this woman has defense attorneys, she has her own defense team, and they claim that this person, Maggie, has no criminal record. That's one of the things they say. No, this woman, since she has no criminal record, well, that's proof that she's behaved very well. Well, yes, that could be the case. But it could also mean that she just hadn't been caught before. In fact, let's see what they tell us. The defense contradicts the prosecution. That's always what the defense is supposed to do. But anyway, thanks. During the hearing held on Monday, October 6th, the prosecution argued that both Martínez and Santos Ruiz allegedly participated in the attacks, doing terrible things to the official vehicles and chasing the officers for several minutes. However, the defense presented a very different narrative. They argued that Marimar Martínez, 30 years old, has been a teacher's assistant at a school for 3 years, has no criminal record, and has more than 30 letters of recommendation from her superiors and family members. And what does that have to do with anything? I honestly couldn't care less that she's a teacher. But anyway, now her lawyers claim that she has a permit to carry a weapon, which was stored away and never used, nor did she ever threaten to use it. Oh, they're also saying that she had the gun because remember that the lice agents say this woman was armed. Pay attention to that detail, but her defense claims that she was exercising her Second Amendment rights and was lawfully carrying her weapon. Well, okay. For his part, Anthony Santos Ruiz, 21 years old, works as a DJ and takes care of his brother who has epilepsy. He also has no criminal record and according to his defense, he didn't know Marimar nor did he participate in the incident in coordination with her. That's what they claim. But of course, as I said, it's normal for the defense to try, well, that's what a defense is for, right? To protect their own. We'll see how this case ends up. For now, it's still in the early stages. But it was a very, very talked about story in the United States. And I'm telling you, the problem is that this woman is in a really, really tough spot. A lot of people are already talking about a life sentence. Unbelievable. So, folks, I'd really love to know what you think and what your opinions are about all this. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.